Okay, let's just resume to our class. You can have your biscuits. I'm sure the biscuit doesn't crunch. That make the crunching sound so loud.
We should hide that.
No, finish it.
It's not in the video. Don't worry.
No, that's a British actually. They bought it from. Yeah. Try to finish it. We still have Okay. Thank you. Who's going to continue the readings? Because we want to finish Abhidhamma today. Okay. Yeah. So can we? You continue. Sorry. Yeah. You.
So, some Abhidharma problems. The Abhidharma analysis represents a continuation of two aspects of Buddhist theory. The breaking down of the individual into its constituent parts and the analysis of the causal relations that exist between those parts. As we saw in the account of no self in chapter 6, the first is characterized by the analysis of being into the 5 skandhas or aggregates of physical and mental phenomena. The second by the analysis of causality in terms of the 12 links of dependent arising. The first counters the eternalist tendency of being to cling to the view that their existence is substantial and enduring. The second, the nihilist tendency to see the world and their own existence as chaotic, tendency to see the world and their own existence as chaotic and meaningless. Again, as you saw in chapter 6, past and present critiques of Buddhist theory argue that the breaking up of the individual into parts cannot account for the experience facts of personal continuity and ends in devaluing the moral status of the individual. Buddhist thought counters that such a criticism does not take proper account of the causal continuity exists between the parts, and that anyway it is true that we must relinquish attachment to our own individuality in order to act
selflessly. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
The rigorous Abhidhamma analysis of the mind and the body in terms of a linear series of momentary dharmas arising and ceasing in every moment meant that the Buddhist thought was required to give an equally rigorous intellectual account of the processes that govern psychological and bodily continuity. For example, I can remember past events, but if the dharmas that constituted those events no longer exist, what is it that I remember? More significantly, how can something that no longer exists have an effect in the present? Buddhist practice is based on the fact that actions have various kinds of results. Wholesome and unwholesome actions lead to pleasant and unpleasant results in the future, sometimes in far distant future lives. Yet, how can an action performed many lifetimes ago certainly have an effect now? Moreover, according to Buddhist thought, actions are habit forming, creating tendencies in the mind. Yet, if actions begin and cease in every moment, how do these tendencies accumulate? How do we learn to do things? And how is it that an acquired skill like swimming or speaking a language can be retained when it is not used, even for many years? And crucially, where is the potentiality for anger when it is not active? Suppose that I'm sitting peacefully, experiencing thought of generosity and friendliness toward the world. At that time, according to Abhidhamma, there is no occurrence of thoughts motivated by greed, aversion, or delusion, but only of thoughts motivated by non-attachment, friendliness, and wisdom. Therefore, my mental state should not be distinguishable from an arhat or even a Buddha's. Yet, if Mara should send his armies against me, or if his daughters should appear before me, it will probably not be long before a state of fear or hatred or desire arose in me. So, here is a difference. In me, there is a potentiality for greed, hatred, and delusion that is not found in a Buddha or Arhat. But how does the potentiality of unwholesome thought certainly emerge from wholesome thought? And how do wholesome Dharma operate as a condition for unwholesome Dharma?
Okay. Yeah. Next one. Do you want to read it? Yeah.
Now the most intellectually creative explanations of these related sets of questions is
Expounded.
expounded by the
Saravastivadins. It's okay. Just try to learn that in the future. Maybe I'll read a lot. Saravastivadin.
Their theories are in the first place based on a radical understanding of the natural time. The view that all three times, present, past, and future, exist. According to this view, to say all dharmas that they are future or past is not to say that they do not exist. They exist, but they happen to exist in the past or the future. Just as other dharmas happen for a moment to exist in the present. Time is thus conceived as a kind of dimension through which dharmas travel. Four different ways of understanding this are associated with the names of four Saravastivadin theorists of the early century. See, from the perspective of modern philosophy, Buddha's suggestion that a dharma can be said to be present relative to
Simultaneous.
simultaneous dharmas, past relative to dharmas that come after, the future relative to dharmas that come before, like a woman who is daughter and a mother, is perhaps the most philosophically subtle. Nevertheless, it was the view of Vasumitra that apparently carried the most authority. A dharma moving through the different times does not change in essential nature, but only in position, just as in
decimal counting.
Or one significance, one ten or 100 according to position.
It's all right. I mean, we couldn't stop here, but why don't we finish it? Because still the few paragraph is related to the similar subject. Okay. All right. And anyone, next one? Yeah.
In connection with the understanding of the existence of dharmas in the three times, the Sarvastivadins propose two dharmas that govern the operation of dharmas. As an ordinary unenlightened person, when one experiences a desire, there is a possession, prati, of present desire. But when it is past, although there may be no possession of present desire, there is still a possession of past desire, and also one of its future results. This possession of the future results will continue to reproduce itself from moment to moment until it matures into possessions of the present result. For an unenlightened person, there is also non-possession of prati, of certain kinds of wholesome dharmas associated with the higher stages of meditation and the Buddhist path. Such non-possession is not a mere absence of these wholesome dharmas, but a real dharma in itself, which must be destroyed along with the possession of unwholesome dharmas by the practice of the task. Critics of the Sarvastivadins objected that if possession is a dharma like other dharmas, then it must require possession in order to operate. There would have to be possession of possession of possession, and so on, ad infinitum. The Sarvastivadins responded with the notion of a secondary possession, anuprati, that both possessed and was in turn possessed by the primary possession.
Okay. Why don't we just finish the next paragraph? We can check a little pause.
Oh, okay. For certain Buddhist theorists, the intellectual sophistication, not to say abstraction, of the Sarvastivadin analysis rendered them problematic. Among the critics of the Sarvastivada, a group styled of Sautrantikas, or those who follow the method of the sutras, are especially important for the subsequent history of Buddhist thought. Although the Sautrantikas did not accept the Abhidharma as the word of the Buddha, it would be wrong to think of them as rejecting the Abhidharma method in its entirety. In fact, the basic Abhidharma system is largely assumed by their criticisms. It is particularly doctrines characteristic of the Vibhasika Sarvastivada Abhidharma that they took issue with. Two theories are especially associated with their name: the theory of the radical momentaries of Dhamma and the theory of cease.
Okay. I think, let me see. Oh, this is a long topic. Okay. We can have a little pause and we can just say how the other thing. Okay. But let me just correct one thing. The word is not Vipassika. In grammar, Vipassika of Sarvastivada. In grammar, in general, to talk to now you read Vipassika Sarvastivada. In the second paragraph, the next forward, the next from below, the third, you know. The word Vipassika and Vipassika is because when you want to address, for example, when you say the people is Abhidhamika, according especially to the Sanskrit rule, when you want to define somebody who is good in Abhidhamma, you have to strengthen the first, the augment, the sound had to make it strengthen the sound. So you have to say Abhidhamika, not Abhidhamika. It's the grammatical rule. So, I mean, of course, now we don't write that way, but I mean, if you really are in the language, the same, Vipassi is as mean expositor, I mean, it's somebody who can explain a thing. So, And same thing when you talk about these kind of people who are good at explaining the thing into this category, so it become, the strand word in Sanskrit is we become I, so the Vaibhasika. Okay. Okay. All right. Any comments? Don't necessarily asking question, but how do you feel what you read? Okay. If no, we are going to have go and keep on. Okay, why don't we just go on first? Keep on. And the next one, what is it? Rejecting the idea Dharma exists in the three times.
Rejecting the idea of Dharmas existing in the three times of present, past, and future.
Sautrantika.
Sautrantikas criticize the Sarvastivadian conception of the duration of a Dharma in the present moment. For the Sarvastivadians, Dharmas are substantial realities,
Dravya,
existing in their own right, which for a moment operate in the present. From this perspective, the present moment, although a very short period of time, is nonetheless a period of time. There is no Sarvastivadian consensus on the length of a moment, but figures given in the text work out at between 0.13 and 13 milliseconds. Yet, object the Sautrantikas, if something endures unchanged for even a moment, then the fundamental Buddhist principle of impermanence is compromised. If things are truly impermanent, then they must be changing continuously and cannot remain static for any period of time, however short. This kind of thinking led to the conception of moments as point instants of time, which, just as geometric points have no extension in space, have no duration in time. It is in the light of this that we should understand the Abhidhamma account of the 12 links of interdependent arising, occurring in a moment. Analyze reality down to the shortest conceivable moment of time, and what we still find is a process rather than inert or static bits.
Yes, we have only 3 paragraphs to go, okay.
Instead of the theory of succession, the Sautrantikas propose that mechanism whereby dharmas produce effects long after they cease to exist can be understood by reference to the images of seeds and perfuming. When I perform an action motivated by greed, it plants a seed in a series of dharmas that's my mind. Such a seed is not a thing itself, a dharma, but merely the modification or fulfilling of the subsequent flow of dharmas consequent upon the action. In the course of time, this modification matures and issues in particular results. In the same way as a seed does not produce its fruit immediately, but only after modification of the shoot, stem, leaf, and flower. The Sautrantikas also suggested that there are 2 types of seeds. In addition to seeds that are planted by our wholesome and unwholesome deeds, there are certain seeds that subsist in the mental continuum of beings from time
Immemorial.
Such seeds constitute an innate potentiality for wholesome behavior that can never be destroyed. In the Sanchardika theory of seeds, we have the precursors of two extremely important concepts of later Mahayana Buddhist thought: the yoga-karing store consciousness, alaya
Vinyana.
vijnana,
Mm.
and the notion of the embody of the Buddha or Buddha nature, the innate capacity in all beings to gain enlightenment. The later concept was to prove particularly influential in the development of certain tendencies of East Asian Buddhist thought.
Okay.
For their part, the Theravada Abhidharmika seem to have referred to the answer to the kinds of problems we have been considering to their understanding of the consciousness process, outlined briefly above. Between each active consciousness process, the mind returns to a basic state of consciousness bhavanga that defines a being as an individual before emerging once more in response to some physical or mental stimulus. Thus, instead of referring to a continuity of character traits or habitual tendencies, to a continuous present but still always changing underlying state of mind, which the Sautrantika and later the Yogacarins tended to. The Theravadins refer it to a continually intervening state of mind.
Okay. Fine. Okay. The last paragraph.
As a footnote to this discussion of the Abhidharma's problem, I should mention the theory of one more Buddhist school, the
Pugalavadins.
Pugalavadins, or those who affirm the existence of the person. Their ideas seem to have been formed in the context of early Abhidharma
Abhidharma, not Amidharma. Abhidharma.
discussions of the undetermined questions, karma and the rebirth, the unconditioned and the nature of consciousness. To some extent, the person of the Pugalavadin might have seen as performing an analogous function to possession, seed, or bhavanga, while other schools accuse them of having smuggled in an Atman or self. They vigorously denied that their person was a self. It cannot be said to be the same or different from the five aggregates. It is not susceptible to annihilation, nor is it eternal. In fact, it is strictly inevitable. The writing of the Pugalavadin himself hardly survived, and our knowledge of their ideas is largely based on the refutation of other books. Although the affirmation of the person can hardly be regarded as characteristic of a mainstream Buddhist thought, it is associated particularly with the Vinaya lineage, named after monk
Vaksiputra.
The Vaksiputraya
Samadhiya.
According to the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who visited India in the 7th century, around a quarter of the monks in India belonged to this school. Of course, that a monk had been ordained into a particular ordination lineage may not have meant that he automatically subscribed to the doctrinal position associated with that ordination lineage. Not all monks ordained as Samathiya need to have been Pugalavadin, just as not all Sarvastivadian monks need necessarily have been Sarvastivadians. This last point is illustrated by the fact that the contemporary Tibetan monks are ordained in the tradition of the
Mula.
Mula
Sarvastivadins.
a sub-school of the ancient Sarvastivadi. Yet none would subscribe to the view that dramas exist in the same time.
Okay, right. We have almost done the Abhidhamma. Any comment, question, blah, blah, blah? Huh? We have a lot of time. We can finish the class soon anyway today.
Page 223, the top paragraph. The sentence that the Theravadins refer to a continually intervening state of mind. Could you elaborate on that statement?
No, let me just start instead of referring to continual character trait and habitual tendency. Underline the state of mind, which is a sound later the Yogacara intends to do. That's trying to refer to the continual intervening state of mind. Let me see the note first. Sure. But I don't know the question. What's the question here?
I don't understand that intervening would be saying that, say, you have existing A and B, and then something get into it.
Yeah.
So exactly what is the doctrinal stance here? I don't see the difference.
I think it's because I guess it's in here. It was saying that these other two schools, the other two schools like Southern Tuka and Yogacharyans, have their way of explaining, right? How one have these character traits and habitual tendency.
Therefore, it's continuous, and while
because once basically one believes that. The theory of seeds, right?
Yeah.
But they're infinite Yogacharan later on as the Alaya Vinjana, right?
So as a matter of speaking, we can describe it as continuous.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the Theravadins disagree with that?
No, I think because that's no any. I mean, what we are talking about the ancient source. There's no any ancient source having a direct conversation saying that they disagree or agree. But Theravadin do postulate a different kind of theory how this kind of trait can be continued and habitual can be continued. Their continuity actually always, it's not like the sixth theory or the conscious, the Alaya Vinjana theory, but it's more like you have momentary changing.
Got it. Okay.
And that the always changing is always being conditioned by certain thing and also linked to their past. That's how I think he doesn't what they mean by continually intervening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But actually, I mean, when we study this, I remember in a long time, and especially in university, when you in the master course, I mean, even in degree class, we talk about that. That's almost like one of the subject. It's a big discussion, and of course, even in examination, certainly they might ask you. It's the but to the Theravada party perspective, it looks like, especially nowadays, people start to learn about so-called Abhidhamma system. Actually, Yogacara, is Abhidhamma system. So, but they are not sutra, there's not like a sutra. So, in that kind of system, it's they somehow especially that influence of the target, the Galaba, 就是如来藏. So, and that sound like they believe in just using a different language to explain something kind of like exists there all the time. And which is really is a kind of, as a Buddhist studies understanding, because the Buddhism would not allow that kind of concept because Buddhism believes in no self. You are not allowed to say that something from the long past is always exists there. So that in other words, you're indicating the thing that are not changing and all the time. So, right. And but somehow anyway, Theravada definitely look at the Bhavanga system that usually call it as a Bhavanga, the understanding, then that might at least solve that problem in a better sense. Right? You could put it this way. Because you change all the time, but then you can intervene and you still carry something that influenced you in the past. You might sometimes always go back to the past too. This is how you are, you are conditioning all the time. Yeah. So rather than, especially people when they learn but let me just put it back. I don't think I like your Vijnana as that way, but when you cannot explain it well enough, then people usually knowingly or unknowingly still think there's something exists, like permanently.
I have a question.
Question. Yes.
It's just sort of interesting kind of things. In one of the movies, when they were talking about the little Buddha, I don't know if anybody's seen it.
I've seen that.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, they seem to be not able to resolve the problem whether that from one person you can have maybe 3 individuals, which sort of like a reincarnation. Is it possible that consciousness can split?
I don't think the Pali way will explain it that way. And also depends, this is from the Pali perspective, definitely. There's no way to make the movie at the end is resulting in such a way. This is certainly. But I cannot talk from a Tibetan also, because even I don't think in general Tibetan also understand in such a way too. But I can understand that if that is not purely, sometimes when you make a movie, this is just my explanation, of course. I don't look at it that way because I think they are kind of look at it in a more aesthetic way. Like, a person when they pass away, so his speech and his body and his mind can be represented by a different person. It's more like a beautiful way of expression. When a person is beautiful, when he dies, people can carry that kind of goodness in there. I sometimes take that not necessarily, even though the movie was kind of like showing is like the reincarnation in the time, like, because old man passed away and he was born as one represented as a girl and the other was a little boy, and right.
One is an American.
Yeah,
boy,
yeah.
And one is an
Indian girl, yeah.
And then the other one.
It's kind of like heavenly. So that's mental. So I think it's like aesthetic way, like, beautiful speech, beautiful body, and the heavenly consciousness, right? I take it that way. Sometimes movie is not necessarily just trying to show the Buddhist theory, but it could make it more, more, I would say actually it's a beautiful way to make it because more sublime, kind of like, how you look at the life is. Not necessarily just in a lineage way, but, Otherwise it would be boring too. And you will not talk about it today.
I was thinking the possibility whether the consciousness can be split. And so it could be like into several, from one.
I have to say, if you have studied the Abhidhamma from the Sarvastivada, we just talked about the 3 times, actually we always look at the thing being constricted by the space and the time. But if you don't understand the time and the space in such a way, everything is possible. So that might explain your way also. Yeah, so that's why but then does it all necessarily have to explain that in terms of the reincarnation? I don't know. But if you talk, yeah, but the thing is, no, but the thing is, interesting part is here. When you say reincarnation, can reincarnation actually is a concept regarded as a Dharma?
I don't think in Theravadian tradition that's...
I know what you mean. That's why Theravada are very clear. That's why I just very early say, Pali don't think that. But if you come to you have to understand even the Tibetan tradition come from Sarvastivada Abhidharma. But I do not think our Sarvastivada Abhidharma is that simple. It's very complicated in many things. Because they start, as I say, the three-time theory is as a mother and as a son. And as a mother, as a daughter. The same person. But it's because perspective is different. And then you say, he's my mother. And the other say, it's my daughter. But the same person, the same Dharma is there. Yeah. And that's, yeah. That why the dimension come from what? The time, right? Yeah. Because in relation, that is the father is with the daughter. And in the relation is that something with the past and something with the future. That is my son, and that's why I call him mother. And that's because the time and space changed the position, but the same Dharma. Now, that's the funny part. It's exposed to a lot of big theory later on in Abhidharma, in Sarvastivada. Yeah. Or in other words, I mean, even you could think it more further, you can write a maybe big review on the movie about the monk passed away here the moment, and then that they will be reborn three body, how you resolve the three body in terms of time and space. Yes. I mean, that's okay. But as I say, from Pali Buddhism, it's a little bit strange. Okay. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Any comment? We try to grab at least 5 minutes. We can have a class. We can finish a little bit earlier today. It's very rare, but it's good. Yeah. Any comment? Anything that you know about Abhidharma? Want to share, people? What is Abhidharma, or what else Abhidharma talk about, or whatever? Because we're in Abhidharma about a topic. Yes. What do you think is you want to comment, or any additional you want to give the information? We have 5 minutes more. Yeah.
There are so many different versions of Abhidharma.
What? Okay. Yeah. Can you elaborate what does the different versions about?
就是有很多不同的
Two major schools that exist.
Here they mentioned actually three already, and then two is influenced by them. That is the Pali Abhidharma. Usually we say the Pali Abhidharma as Abhidharma, and then in the other we use a Sanskrit term Abhidharma with R. Okay. So the other two is the Sarvastin Abhidharma, and the other is Pugalavadin Abhidharma. Okay.
Okay. If I'm going to study Abhidharma in the future, which version is the one I should choose?
No, any version you should learn. Depends on. I mean, actually, when we are in a university, it's a requirement course, 1 year. But in 1 year, you have to study every Abhidharma. But you don't study in the detail, but you definitely must know their differences and the common and blah, 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 and the argument.
I'm not in a Buddhist university. I'm talking about...
Talking about what?
自己的修行英文怎么讲?
Oh.
Spiritual development.
Yeah, but even for a practice, I mean, let me see, because if we talk about the practices are also how you understand the practice. I'm very Abhidharmika now, the way I explain. You want to say the practice in terms of generalization practices, or you want to say that practices is more accordant with the this school Abhidharma or that school Abhidharma. Say that you want to say, I want to do the practice in accordance with the Pali Abhidharma, or I want to do the practice in accordance with the Saravasti Abhidharma. The problem it is, but both Abhidharma, they still believe they also serve the best purpose. Yeah.
I have a better way to ask this question.
Okay.
Okay. Which version of Abhidharma 跟你最相应？
Who?
跟
Me? I don't want to answer you this question. Because whatever I say, people like me, they criticize me, don't like me, criticize. No, I think I it's the, I think I still follow the sutta way of understanding. The Buddha always say, what is helping you, use that one. Because
I don't have the time to spend 1 year study, like in the university, study all Abhidharma.
No, it's not like that. It's not like, your question is very similar to one of the famous story in Buddhism, saying that, there was a guy who was in the desert, and he was so thirsty, and he almost died, and he knew he need desperately to look for the water. Somehow, suddenly he was so happy because he found the oasis, and he could find a pond of water there. And he was walked beside the pond of water, and then he sat there and started to feel sad. Why? And he said, how could I finish this water?
Just drink it.
You are right. Why? Because the problem is to first to solve how to quench the thirst. And then when you have the unwholesome karma, it's whatever way, now you can solve the problem that will move you to the next movement. And otherwise, you are just sitting and say, how can I finish the water until I really get quenched? No.
It's like the one who got shot by the dart.
Yeah, the same meaning.
Poisonous, right.
And then if you ask the question, who shoot me, what caste people, which direction he come to shoot me, and he died. He have to take off the arrow first. And in other words, you recognize this is not good, you should take it off now. And then you do the cure. Then maybe you don't care, look who is shooting me. Maybe you care, but first solve the problem, then you know the next answer.
那我就说，如果3本书摆在桌上，我应该先拿哪一本书打开来看？
No, it's maybe best to say this way. Do you think that when you start to study Buddhism, you should not read any science magazine or science? You should not study that? Do you think that? You shouldn't read any science, any mathematics, or any other thing?
I can answer perhaps metaphorically, because some people are interested in investment, so they have to be very frugal in their investment.
Yeah.
And make sure that whichever book they invested in, that one is going to bring the most profit.
That's return ratio.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So some people approach problem that way.
Because I think if you study the Dharma, the most approach way is always whatever you learn, you don't ask for the immediate result. That will be the most profitable. When I say immediate result, I mean that come from a desire, right?
Attachment.
Yeah, I don't want to use the term. That is immediate attachment, right? Because a lot of people either they study what kind of Abhidharma, they think they learn a lot, they read a lot. Actually, they get more confused in their life, and they sometimes, there are people like that. The more they learn, they don't learn is also a problem. They don't know anything. They say anything wrong, but the more they learn, they become unhuman.
Yeah.
It could be, you know what I'm saying? But because they forget, they lost the main point. They become attached. They become proud. They become the most arrogant person. And they think that they are the best. And who are not study this, they are worthless. And that's lost the whole main Buddhist purpose.
That was what Buddha,
Okay.
the Buddha taught about. He was against rituals and against
Yeah.
doctrination,
Yeah.
and it was to follow your own path.
Try to remember that. But of course, if you learn, as I say, but if I understand, I'm just interested to know what they're saying and what works best for me. Then you will not have that way, because that more you'll find, oh, now I'm getting greedy, I'm getting this, and you start to know that. But learning is always good. There's no problem. But okay, don't just believe what people give you one answer. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Maybe.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to ask is Abhidhamma a very important part of the whole study for Buddhism?
Are you suggesting me after finishing this we are going to learn Abhidhamma? I just today when I read, I think, why don't we just teach Abhidhamma after this book? However, I have to guarantee people are coming, otherwise I will be talking to myself. Actually, put it this way, in the Buddhist history, the most in general understanding, I don't want to say for sure. I think it's sure, but I don't want to say that way. The most complete way to study is Abhidhamma. And it's also because Abhidhamma it influenced later a lot of things. Like I just mentioned, if you look at it chronologically especially, then there's like the Tathagata, Yogacara, even Nagarjuna's emptiness concept, or either they part agree or complete, in some way disagree, but still influenced by the Abhidhamma. Yeah. Because when Abhidhamma comes, it's become really, you have to imagine this, Abhidhamma came along, if look for the historic record, for what we have the text now, certainly before Christ they start that already. You have to imagine that for a few hundred years they have all these university in those days, they started to teach all this. Kind of, you put it now almost like the modern universal concept, like, and also the modern kind of like psychology, even much more complicated than the psychology. And imagine then it was a big subject. But just only unfortunately in those days, mostly the monastic members study. And that's, anyway. Yes, and later on definitely influence the whole Buddhist picture, either agree or disagree. Like we just mentioned even in the book here, say the Sautrantika is the one who disagree, but he did also say in the book, but it's true. But why he want to mention, sometimes when you read this book, there's a good, something in detail there. He mentioned, don't think that they actually do not totally disagree with Abhidhamma. They just, not all the point they agree with Abhidhamma. Not that they don't study and they don't encourage you to study like that. Because usually if you learn in old day, people telling you Sautrantika is the one who against Abhidhamma. It's not true. It's not totally against. It's just do not disagree. Not like Abhidhammika think everything what they say is, don't change it. Cannot all one. No, it still argue what the sutta say. It doesn't make sense, like, and so forth. So yeah, and okay, yeah. Abhidhamma is to study for study actually. The most complex to study is the Abhidhamma, because after when you learn Abhidhamma, then you start to have to distinguish this kind of understanding or this kind of system comes from Bhagalavada, Samidhiya, or nowadays, of course, Tapali is a different system. And then, let me see, another one influences school. Samidhiya, Bhagalavada, and then Sarvastivada, and what is the other school? No, Vaipasika is belong to Sarvastivada usually. I cannot remember suddenly. There are 4 main schools. But in Tibetan they use a different ways. They call the school of Sikh. That means Sautrantika, sorry. There are 4. So they actually are really the most complex to study, because you have to remember how they think, what their system. And even among them, what the diversity of them, and also who against them, and what their other system, and that's why the most complicated to study Buddhism is the Abhidhamma and the schools. Yeah. What you want to say? Something just.
No, I forget it.
Okay. Any comment over here? I'm just saying that. So I don't know. You will have to guarantee the people are really interested.
Abhidhamma or Abhidharma?
I'm not sure yet, because I was thinking either, because especially my position usually I don't like the people. I mean, this is my position, also the way, because it's very important who's going to guide you. Some people guide you the way thinking this is the thing that you got to almost believe it, almost like. But I'm not this kind of person. That's for good and for bad. But but I like you to think and you choose yourself. It's not my business to give you. What I'm saying. But of course, I told you my principle already. But I don't mind because this certainly they come from a valuable master also. They are not come from nothing. They are really all from a greatness master. There's no only just one greatness master tradition. And that's what I'm saying. Okay. Yes.
But in the Mahayana teaching, how much Abhidharma is incorporated?
Oh, yeah. For example, if you learn Yogacara, as I mentioned, you have to learn Sanyan, Sanjiao, Nisma, Asanga. Those are Abhidharma. Yeah.
But nobody actually teaching it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because as I say, to learn Abhidharma is complicated enough. How many people really willing to learn? And besides, usually learn Abhidharma. Now we have much more sources now. People put online. But imagine even during my time, 10 years, 15 years without Google, okay?
Yeah.
And that time, for sure, if you don't have teacher teach, there's no way. I can assure you, almost no way you can study. Even now, still you need a teacher point something. Otherwise, you always have a lot of blind spot there. Yeah.
It's like the lecture that you gave in IBA about meditation tradition, especially nowadays,
Yeah.
are influenced by the master lady.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Mahasi Sayadaw, yeah. Oh, Lady Sayadaw in earlier time, yes, yeah.
and the way that the meditation workshop, Chan
Yeah, the retreat, the way of Kokoro retreat,
system,
yeah.
it's very modern, right?
Yeah,
Even in the older day, in the monastic tradition, nobody did it that way.
yeah, no.
So how in the old day the monk learned to do meditation?
Yeah, mentioned in the text, they go to ask a teacher subscribe you the technique, and then you go back and you just, either you live in the same forest or not same, but let's say in the same place, you just practice. And he said very clearly, don't disturb the teacher unless you see the limiter. And it's very clear, you don't see limiter, don't come to ask me, it's really wasting my time. And like that, that's how, And of course you might say, oh, I see a little glimpse of limiter, I still don't understand. You can ask that question, but you don't always know why I don't say, why people say, and so forth. And you don't disturb the teacher. Those are the tradition. So that's why, according to Pali, they have 5 ways. I think in Yogacara they have 4 ways or 5 ways. They're almost a similar concept. I mean, approach to the teacher, asking what kind of meditation subject they should learn, listen carefully, remember well, and back to practice. Until what? And then you come to ask the teacher again. Yeah. So.
But in the modern day,
Yeah.
even the monastic people go to one of those retreats.
They don't know, not necessarily.
No?
No, some they would just, because they learn the Dharma, the only thing they need time to practice. And of course, they still need a teacher and asking some little detail, not the text. They are not asking the teacher, quote me the text, because they know the text already. I mean, I'm talking about really let's say the Pali tradition. Who doesn't know the text? Most of them are, at least in the Buddhist education for 10 years, at least, right? They know the text already. They don't need that. They only tell the practical science, and they tell this, and maybe sometimes the teacher find, okay, you learn more the text than the other, or you know Pali one. That's why they alter the text for you, just to make you have more faith in Dharma. So look, that text say this way, why don't you just go and look that? All the Abhidharma say that way, why don't you just go? And they were, okay, yeah, true, I forget that, because sometimes we tend to forget many things. And they go to practice, and until that really comes along the experience, what the text can become experience, life experience. And then they again ask, now, okay, I'm here now. Is there anything I need to be aware of? Or should I go further? And even if the teacher silence, if you know the text, you have to suggest. Or what about if I just go further that way? Or this is the right time I should practice this, let's say, according to the text. Or you could alter the text. Say, the text say, now I say this, can I do that? This is why in the old day they do that. In the monastery, you don't have a retreat concept, no. But as I say, let's say I can give a talk. Actually, the concept of retreat does change the Buddhists a lot. A lot. I mean, in a good way also, in many ways. But sometimes it could be a little problematic too. But depends on how you look at it. It does change a lot. But for sure, one thing is for good way, definitely. If it's just for analyzing purposes, then it becomes widespread. But then, then later on, people take the practice in a different sense already. I must have good mindfulness so that I can earn more money. I have a mindfulness so that I can be, trying to do some bad thing. That's why there was one guy started to teach the stock market people how you can buy good stock and how you could do this stock job and have a better performance. It depends on how you look at it. That's depends on what you mean. Yes, in some way, it's still maybe wholesome in the mind, but then use the wholesome mind to do something really interesting,
The Sangha idea, I mean, I believe that it's very important in a way. I mean, I think it was the Buddha himself that made emphasis about that, right? Because this is when everybody experiences meditation in a completely different way.
Yeah, it is. In the Sangha. You're supposed to, I mean, of course, in the Buddha idea, the Sangha is proposed almost like, just now I use a term I cannot remember in my mind now. It is something like, it's kind of, at least not necessarily every Sangha is, every monk is or nuns are doing the proper thing, but at least there is a way, it's a quality control, like nowadays what we call the quality control. Maybe they are not the best, but at least they would know, if they have a family and this. I mean, this is human nature. You certainly want to think about your own thing, your relative more. But when you are in a Sangha, yes, you still do many things, but you still somehow not that strong. You couldn't do that too obviously, maybe. That's a quality control. Like that. That's why the Sangha was meant to be. Yeah. Doesn't mean that they all are sometimes better than the other, but what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just okay, I guess we can end the class, and before we do the transfer merit, nice that we have all this Abhidhamma. That's a good thing about Abhidhamma. Then you start to ask a lot of questions. Yes, Sagaranda, so whenever.
Sapiyo vivajantu
Sappaloko vinasadu mate bhavamvantara
yo sukhitika yogo bhava.
That's it? Yeah, then if N uses power D. If you don't say D, mean there's no full stop. I was waiting. The full stop. Yeah. Okay, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming for the class. Yeah.